From cave paintings to like AI generated art, it really is kind of a mind-blowing journey when you think about how art has changed and evolved, over the centuries.
Yeah.
And, we have these two sources for this deep dive. And one is a very academic excerpt. The other one is a blog post by an artist named Dmitry Gorbatenko. But what's interesting is that they both kind of agree that art is this like ever-changing mirror reflecting how humans and technology kind of work together and how that relationship has evolved over time.
Yeah, what really strikes me is how these sources, even though they're coming from such different perspectives, both begin with cave paintings.
Yeah.
As this like fundamental starting point for understanding art.
Right.
And it really highlights just this enduring power of visual storytelling.
Yeah, even way back then, when you think about those cave paintings, it's like people were driven to create, right, to leave their mark, to tell their stories.
Mm-hmm.
And from those cave walls, I mean, art has taken this crazy journey through history, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And the excerpt really points to the Renaissance as this pivotal moment in that journey.
Yeah.
It was a period where art literally shifted perspective, mirroring like this changing worldview of the time.
The Renaissance, that's when things got really interesting in terms of technique, right?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden they figured out how to make things look like super realistic on a flat surface.
Exactly. Think about linear perspective and the concept of vanishing points.
Right.
These were innovations that were driven by a new understanding of geometry and optics.
Wow.
So artists like Da Vinci weren't just, painting what they saw. They were applying scientific principles to capture the world with this incredible accuracy.
It's like art and science had a baby, and the Renaissance was the result.
Yeah, I like that.
But the evolution obviously didn't stop there. I mean, both sources talk about like the seismic shift that happened when photography came onto the scene.
Photography.
Yeah.
That's where things get really disruptive.
Right.
Just imagine the impact of this new technology that could capture reality in an instant.
Yeah.
It challenged the very purpose of representational art. I mean, why painstakingly paint a portrait when you can just like snap a photo?
Right. So what did artists do? Did they just give up?
Not at all. They adapted. They evolved.
Okay.
Photography actually became a catalyst for artistic exploration.
Interesting.
So you have movements like Impressionism emerging, where artists like Monet and Renoir, they focused on capturing the fleeting effects of light and color.
Oh, okay.
Creating this subjective experience rather than a photographic reproduction.
So instead of trying to compete with photography's realism, they kind of went in the opposite direction and embraced a whole new visual language.
Precisely. And this idea of technology driving artistic innovation that leads us right into the 20th century, where digital art further democratized the creative process.
And this brings us to Dmitry and his music, right?
Yeah.
In his blog post, he talks about how technology has totally transformed his own creative process.
Right.
Specifically in his electronic music projects like Zen Studio 888 and Binary Descent. It's fascinating to see how these parallels between visual art and music kind of play out.
Yeah, it's a great example of how technology doesn't just change the tools.
Right.
It changes the entire artistic landscape.
Yeah.
So digital art made creation way more accessible.
Yeah.
Allowing artists to experiment and manipulate images in ways that were just impossible before.
Right.
And you can see those same principles at work in electronic music, where artists like Dmitry are crafting these soundscapes that really push the boundaries of traditional composition.
Totally. It's like technology gave artists this huge box of new crayons to play with, and they just went wild.
Yeah.
And now we're in this era where AI is like stepping into the artist's studio, right?
And it's not just holding the paintbrush. It's actually starting to generate its own ideas.
Yeah. Both sources talk about these AI art generators like Midjourney, and honestly, it's kind of like magic to me. You just type in some words and it spits out a picture. I mean, how does it even work?
Yeah, it's a pretty complex process.
Right.
It involves algorithms and neural networks trained on massive amounts of visual data.
Right.
But the basic idea is that AI learns to connect words with images and then uses that knowledge to create something totally new based on the prompts you give it.
So the excerpt gives some really cool examples of what AI art can do, like landscapes that actually evolve over time, interactive installations that respond to your emotions, and even personalized artwork tailored to your own preferences.
Yeah, the possibilities are pretty mind-blowing.
They are.
I mean, imagine having a piece of art that's designed just for you, reflecting your personality, your experiences, your dreams. It's really makes you think about what artistic expression could look like in the future.
Okay, I'll admit that's pretty impressive, but does that mean human artists are going to be out of a job?
Not necessarily. Both sources really emphasize that while AI is this powerful tool, it's still just a tool.
Yeah.
The human artist is the one who's guiding the process, shaping the vision, imbuing the work with meaning and emotion.
Dimitri makes this point really clear in his blog post. He sees AI as like a collaborator, not a competitor.
Right.
He says the artist's role is to curate, to refine, to inject that spark of human creativity that AI, at least for now, can't replicate.
And it makes me think about Dimitri's approach to his music.
Yeah.
He uses all these sophisticated digital tools and software, but it's his unique artistic vision, his understanding of sound design and composition that makes his music so compelling.
When I look at AI-generated art, it's technically amazing, but I don't always feel that emotional connection that I get from art created by a human. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. The excerpt even says, art is ultimately a human endeavor driven by vision, perspective, and emotion.
Right.
AI can mimic those things, but it doesn't necessarily experience them in the same way.
So even though AI can generate technically impressive art, it's still missing that human touch, the artist's perspective, their emotions, their unique way of seeing the world. That's what gives art its soul.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's the difference between a technically perfect photograph and a photograph that captures a fleeting moment, a raw emotion, a story that resonates with the viewer.
So what does this all mean for the future of art? Where do we go from here? Yeah, it feels like we're on the verge of something like totally new, a whole different way of thinking about art and creativity.
It is exciting, isn't it? And both sources seem to agree that the future of art lies in this really interesting blend of human and machine.
Right.
Think of it as a collaboration, not a competition.
So instead of worrying about AI, like replacing artists, we should be thinking about how they can work together to create something even more amazing.
Exactly. And the excerpt suggests that, AI could actually empower artists with new tools and possibilities,
Right.
leading to entirely new forms of artistic expression that we can't even imagine yet.
Like what?
Well, imagine artists using AI to explore concepts and ideas that would just be impossible to do with traditional methods. Think about sculptures that actually respond to your touch paintings, that evolve over time, or even like entire virtual worlds created through this fusion of human imagination and AI's computational power.
Wow. That's pretty wild.
It is.
So it's like AI could help us break free from the limits of our physical world and enter this realm of pure creative possibility.
Exactly.
But if AI is doing so much of the heavy lifting, what does that even mean for the role of the human artist?
That's the big question, isn't it? And I think the human element will always be crucial.
Okay.
Art is more than just technical skill or visual spectacle.
Yeah.
It's about expressing something deeply human.
Yeah.
It's about connecting with an audience on an emotional level.
So even in a future where AI can generate like photorealistic images or compose symphonies, it's that human spark, that unique perspective, that emotional depth that will continue to define what we consider art.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to Dimitri.
Right.
He talks about how his music is like this reflection of his own experiences, his emotions, his journey as an artist. AI might be able to mimic his style, but it can't replicate the essence of what makes his music uniquely his.
It's like the difference between a technically perfect performance and one that moves you to tears, right?
Exactly. It's that raw human element that makes all the difference.
So as we're kind of wrapping up our deep dive into the evolution of art, from those ancient cave paintings to the mind-blowing possibilities of AI, what's the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway is that art is a journey, a constant evolution of human expression shaped by the tools and technologies of our time. And while AI presents these exciting new possibilities, it's the human heart, the human vision that will always be at the core of true artistic creation.
Yeah, what a journey it's been.
It really has.
We started with prehistoric cave paintings, explored the groundbreaking innovations of the Renaissance, witnessed the disruptive power of photography, and dove headfirst into the digital age and the rise of AI art. And as we move forward into this exciting new era, the question isn't whether AI will replace human artists, but rather how we can embrace this collaboration to push the boundaries of creativity and explore new realms of artistic expression.
It's a future full of possibilities, and I can't wait to see what incredible art emerges from this fusion of human and machine. Who knows? Maybe you, dear listener, will be the one to create the next masterpiece that redefines art for generations to come. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.